My name is Sophia Mitchell, 31, a graphic designer who's lived her entire life in the shadow of her perfect younger sister Heather. I stood alone in the hallway of the Bellamy Hotel, staring at my place card that read Table 17, which wasn't even in the main reception hall. I looked down at my $1,200 designer dress that had taken 3 paychecks to afford and remembered the weeks I'd spent preparing for this day. I did what any self-respecting person would do. I left. And that single decision changed everything. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Trust me, what happened after I walked out those doors is something you won't want to miss. Growing up in Wellesley, an affluent Boston suburb, being Heather Mitchell's sister meant living in perpetual second place. Our family home, a sprawling colonial with pristine gardens, felt more like a shrine to Heather's accomplishments than a place where 2 daughters were equally cherished. My parents, Thomas and Catherine Mitchell, never tried to hide their favoritism. Dad, a successful corporate attorney, and Mom, a former debutante turned charity board member, had created Heather in their perfect image. She was the cheerleader, the prom queen, the valedictorian with the perfect GPA. Meanwhile, I was the artistic one, the dreamer, the girl who spent hours sketching in her room while the family celebrated yet another of Heather's achievements downstairs. Sophia, why can't you apply yourself like your sister? Became the unofficial family motto. It started early, when Heather brought home A's. My B+s were met with subtle disappointment. When she won the science fair in 5th grade, my parents bought her a new computer. When I won a district-wide art competition that same year, I got a pat on the back and a "That's nice, dear." We weren't always at odds. I can still remember when Heather was 5 and I was 8, how we'd build blanket forts in the living room and pretend we were exploring ancient temples. She would follow me around the house, her tiny hand in mine, telling everyone I was the best big sister ever. Those memories make what came later even more painful. The shift happened gradually through middle school, as Heather began to absorb our parents' value system. By high school, she'd not only accepted her golden child status but wielded it like a weapon. My senior year, I had my first major art exhibition at our school. After months of work, my watercolor series was selected as the showcase piece. The exhibition fell on the same night as Heather's regional debate competition. I still remember standing by my paintings, scanning the crowd repeatedly for my parents' faces, only to receive a text. Heather made finals. So proud. Get home safe, we'll see your paintings another time. They never did. The pattern continued through our milestones. When I graduated high school, my parents gifted me a used Toyota Corolla with 80,000 miles on it. When Heather graduated 3 years later, they bought her a brand new condo near her college campus. She needs to focus on her pre-law studies, my father explained, as if my design education required less dedication. Despite everything, I worked hard. I put myself through art school with scholarships and part-time jobs, refusing to ask my parents for help that would come with comparisons. I built my graphic design business from scratch without family connections, while Heather walked into a prestigious law firm where my father's golf buddy was a partner. On the surface, Heather maintained the appearance of sisterly affection. At family gatherings, she'd throw an arm around me for photos and say things like, "I don't know what I'd do without my big sis." But in private, she'd forget to return my calls for weeks, cancel our rare lunch plans at the last minute, or subtly diminish my career accomplishments. Sophia's doing her little design thing, she'd tell relatives at Thanksgiving, as if I wasn't running a successful business with major clients. Meanwhile, my parents would beam with pride describing Heather's first case or her promotion to junior partner. Then came the announcement. Heather was engaged to Jackson Williams, heir to the Williams banking fortune, and the perfect addition to her perfect life. My parents were ecstatic. "This is the wedding of the year," my mother declared at the engagement dinner. "The Williams family has connections throughout New England. This union will elevate all of us." I sat at the end of the table, nursing my champagne, wondering where exactly I fit in this grand family elevation plan. Little did I know just how clearly I was about to find out. When Heather asked me to be her maid of honor, I nearly choked on my mimosa. We were at an upscale brunch spot in Back Bay, just the two of us, a rarity in itself. "You're my sister," she said, sliding a small gift box across the table. Inside was a silver bracelet with a tiny engraved heart. Who else would I choose? For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wedding would bring us closer. Maybe Heather genuinely wanted to repair our fractured relationship. I accepted with tears in my eyes, imagining sisterly bonding over cake tastings and flower arrangements. I couldn't have been more wrong. The 8 months of wedding planning became an extended exercise in humiliation. The 6 other bridesmaids, all Heather's sorority sisters from college, formed an impenetrable clique that I was never truly part of. They had cute nicknames for each other and inside jokes I wasn't privy to. Our bridesmaid group text would suddenly go silent when I contributed ideas, only to explode with activity minutes later as if I wasn't there. "No offense, Sophia," said Brittany, the self-appointed second in command, "but Heather wants a certain aesthetic. Your suggestions are just a bit unconventional." My mother, Catherine, appointed herself unofficial wedding planner despite the $15,000 professional planner on retainer. Every idea I offered was systematically dismissed. "Sophia, darling," she'd say with that tight smile, "leave the design elements to professionals. We want everything to be perfect for your sister." I wanted to remind her that design was literally my profession, but I bit my tongue. For Heather's sake, I told myself. The dress fitting was particularly brutal. We gathered at an exclusive bridal salon where champagne flowed freely, and the consultant fawned over Heather. After selecting her gown, a custom $30,000 Vera Wang, attention turned to bridesmaid dresses. "We need something that works on all body types," Heather said, eyeing me. "Sophia's got more curves than the rest of you." The bridesmaids tittered while I stood there, feeling my face burn. My mother nodded sagely, adding, "Perhaps something with a slimming effect for Sophia?" I was a size 8 among size 2 seconds, hardly unusual, but they made me feel like I was wearing a neon sign that said "Fat Sister." The bachelor and bachelorette weekend in Aspen was another nightmare. Despite everyone knowing I had the most modest income in the group, I was assigned the pull-out couch in the chalet while others got private rooms. Somehow, my credit card ended up covering multiple group dinners and activities with vague promises of "we'll Venmo you later" that never materialized. I returned home $3,000 poorer and feeling like the hired help rather than the maid of honor. 2 weeks before the wedding came the rehearsal dinner. I'd spent days preparing a heartfelt speech, pushing aside years of hurt to focus on childhood memories and genuine wishes for Heather's happiness. When I arrived at the venue, elegant place cards marked each setting. Mine included MOH speech in beautiful calligraphy. But as dinner progressed, I noticed the program at each place setting told a different story. The speech slot had been assigned to James, Jackson's best man. "Oh, didn't anyone tell you?" my mother said when I questioned her. "We thought it best to streamline the speeches. James is a professional public speaker, after all." The final betrayal came when I discovered that all the wedding materials, from the save the dates to the programs to the custom monograms, had been designed using concepts I'd created for free. Heather had presented my work to the wedding planner as her own ideas, taking full credit for the design elements I'd spent hours perfecting. The morning of the wedding arrived. I was up at 5 a.m. to reach the bridal suite, armed with emergency supplies and ready to support my sister. While the other bridesmaids lounged in monogrammed silk robes, I steamed dresses, arranged breakfast, and fielded calls from vendors. When the photographer arrived, Heather arranged the bridesmaids for getting ready shots. "Sophia, can you hold my bouquet while we do these?" Heather asked. I wasn't in a single pre-ceremony photo. Little did I know, the real insult was still to come. The grand ballroom of the Bellamy Hotel had been transformed into a fairy tale setting. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables adorned with towering floral arrangements. A 12-piece orchestra played softly as guests in designer attire mingled. It was the wedding of the year, just as my mother had predicted. The bridal party preparation had set the tone for the day. While the other bridesmaids had their makeup professionally done, I was asked to help coordinate the timeline. When the photographer captured the bridesmaids in their matching robes, I was dispatched to check on the ceremony space. By the time I returned, they had moved on to different shots. "We didn't want to wait," Heather explained with a shrug. "The photographers on a tight schedule." The family photos before the ceremony were equally telling. As relatives assembled in the hotel's garden, I stepped in beside our parents, only to be repositioned. "Let's do immediate family first," the photographer said, looking uncomfortable. "Yes, just Thomas, Catherine, and me for now," Heather agreed, not meeting my eyes. I stood aside, watching as they captured portrait after portrait. When it was finally my turn, I was positioned at the far edge, easily croppable. During the ceremony, I stood dutifully with the other bridesmaids, holding my bouquet and smiling until my cheeks hurt. I was placed furthest from Heather, barely visible from the audience's perspective. As Jackson and Heather exchanged vows, I felt a pang watching my sister, despite everything, in her moment of happiness. "I want to thank my best friends who've always been there for me," Heather said in her vows, gesturing toward her bridesmaids without a specific acknowledgement of her only sister. After the ceremony, cocktail hour began on the terrace. I circulated as expected, making small talk with distant relatives and friends of my parents. "Sophia, how's that art hobby going?" my father's cousin asked. "It's not a hobby, actually. My design business is. You should talk to Heather about career advice," he interrupted. "Now there's a girl who knows how to apply herself." Another relative patted my arm sympathetically. "Not everyone can be Heather, dear, you have your creative talents." By the time dinner was announced, I was emotionally exhausted but determined to maintain my dignity. Guests began finding their tables, exclaiming over the beautiful centerpieces I had designed but received no credit for. I followed the crowd into the ballroom, searching for table 1 where I assumed the bridal party would be seated. My name wasn't there. I checked the head table. The place cards listed Heather, Jackson, their parents, and the best man and his girlfriend. "No, Sophia. Are you looking for your seat?" The wedding planner approached with her clipboard. "You're at table 17. She pointed toward the hallway that led to the restrooms. Following her gesture, I discovered a small table partially hidden behind a decorative screen, positioned directly outside the main ballroom doors. The table was noticeably smaller than those in the ballroom, with simpler centerpieces and plain white chairs instead of the gold Chiavari chairs inside. My place card sat beside those for my great-aunt Edith, who was hard of hearing. My father's disgraced cousin who had once been arrested for tax evasion. My mother's former friend with whom she'd had a falling out. And 2 people identified as Smith wedding venue contacts. We were the undesirables, the people they had to invite but didn't want to see. I stood frozen, place card in hand, as servers bustled past me into the main ballroom. Through the open doors, I could see my parents seated prominently at a front table, Champagne flutes raised as Jackson's father began a toast. "At least Sophia didn't make a scene today," I overheard my mother saying to someone as they passed by my hallway exile. We were worried she might pull one of her dramatic stunts. In that moment, something broke inside me. Years of diminishment, of being the family afterthought, of bending myself into shapes trying to earn a place at the table, literally and figuratively, crystallized into perfect clarity. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a mistake. This was a message. I was not, and had never been, a full member of this family. I placed my place card back on table 17, turned, and walked straight to the hotel bathroom. With mechanical precision, I removed the pastel blue bridesmaid dress, folding it carefully. From my emergency bag, I pulled out jeans and a sweater, changed quickly, and texted the hotel valet to bring around my car. As I walked through the lobby, a distant cousin spotted me. "Sophia? Where are you going?" "They're about to serve dinner." Table 17 lost its appetite, I replied, and pushed through the revolving door into the cool evening air. Only when I was safely in my car, driving away from the Bellamy Hotel, did I allow the tears to come. Not tears of sadness this time, but of release. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself over the approval I would never receive anyway. I had no idea that this simple act of self-respect was about to change everything. I drove on autopilot, windshield blurring with tears, until I found myself outside Megan's apartment building in Cambridge. Megan had been my roommate in college and remained my closest friend, one of the few people who understood the dynamics of the Mitchell family without judgment. When she opened the door and saw me in street clothes, mascara streaking my carefully applied makeup, her eyes widened. "The wedding's tonight." "What happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. I collapsed onto her couch and told her everything, the months of subtle humiliations culminating in my banishment to the hallway table. As I spoke, my phone began buzzing repeatedly in my purse. I ignored it. "They're probably realizing I'm gone," I said, reaching for the power button to turn it off. Megan stopped me. "Wait. Before you shut it off, let's document this." "Document what?" "What they did to you." Her expression hardened. "This isn't normal, Sophia. This isn't okay." She convinced me to take a simple photo, the place card for table 17 that I'd slipped into my purse before leaving. Against the background of my bridesmaid dress, now draped over Megan's chair. "Post it," she urged. "Just the facts. No rant, no accusations." After hesitation, I agreed. I opened Instagram and uploaded the image with a simple caption. "When you're the bride's only sister but get seated in the hallway at her wedding, sometimes the only choice is to respect yourself and leave." I added no hashtags, tagged no one, then turned off my phone and accepted the glass of wine Megan offered. We spent the evening watching mindless comedies, and I fell asleep on her couch, emotionally drained but strangely at peace. I woke to Megan shaking my shoulder, her expression a mix of shock and amusement. "Sophia, wake up. You need to see this." My post had gone viral overnight. Over 50,000 shares across platforms. Thousands of comments. My Instagram followers had jumped from 800 to nearly 15,000. Hallway Sister and Table 17 were trending. "What the hell?" I whispered, scrolling through notifications that continued to pour in. Comments ranged from supportive, "You're my hero for walking out," to outraged on my behalf, "Who puts their sister in the hallway?" People were sharing their own stories of family exclusion and mistreatment. The post had been screenshot and shared on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook groups. My inbox was flooded with messages, including several from media outlets. "We'd love to hear your side of the story. Would you be interested in an exclusive interview? Our morning show would like to feature you." Local Boston news had already run a segment calling it the Wedding Hallway Sister story. featuring interviews with wedding planners who unanimously agreed that seating an immediate family member in a hallway was unheard of and deeply inappropriate. I watched in disbelief as a wedding etiquette expert on a morning show declared, "This is perhaps the most egregious breach of family wedding protocol I've ever encountered in 20 years in the industry." Most shocking of all, the wedding hashtag Heather and Jackson 2025 was being flooded with comments from strangers. "Did you really put your sister in the hallway?" Team Sophia. Table 17 deserved better. Justice for Sophia. Wondering if the Williams family knows what kind of people they just married into Table 17. "This is insane," I told Megan, setting the phone down. "I never wanted this kind of attention." "Maybe not," she replied, "but maybe it's exactly what needed to happen. You've been invisible to your family for so long. Now the whole world sees you." As the day progressed, the story continued to gain traction. I received a message from the wedding photographer, someone I'd never met before the wedding day. With an attachment, "I feel like you should have these," she wrote. "I'm a youngest sister myself and couldn't stay silent." Attached were photos showing how I had been deliberately positioned at the edges of every shot, how Heather had repeatedly redirected attention away from me, and most damningly, an image of my mother pointing toward the hallway and clearly mouthing "not in here" when I had been looking for my seat. By evening, my story had made national news in a segment about wedding etiquette and family dynamics. The reporter closed with, "While we've only heard one side of this viral story, it raises important questions about how we treat family members during milestone events, and the courage it takes to walk away from toxic situations, even in designer heels." As I sat in Megan's apartment, watching my private family drama become public discourse, I felt simultaneously exposed and validated. For the first time, the treatment I had normalized for years was being named for what it was: wrong. My phone rang again, my parents. After a deep breath, I declined the call, but the voicemail notification appeared moments later. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. My father's voice, tight with rage: "Sophia Elizabeth Mitchell, you will take down that post and issue a public apology immediately. You have embarrassed this entire family and ruined your sister's special day with your childish attention-seeking. We raised you better than this." In the background, I could hear my mother wailing about what the club members must think and Heather shouting something about her honeymoon being completely overshadowed. I deleted the message, turned to Megan, and said something I never thought I'd have the courage to say. "I don't think I did anything wrong." And in that moment, I truly believed it. The Mitchell family response was swift and furious. My father called 17 times in 3 hours before sending a text that simply read, "You've made your mother ill. I hope you're satisfied." My sister alternated between calling me and sending lengthy accusatory messages. "You've always been jealous of me," one text read. "You couldn't stand that my wedding was perfect, so you had to make it all about you. Take down that post." An email arrived from Heather's new mother-in-law, Caroline Williams. The Williams family name has been associated with dignity and discretion for 4 generations. "Your public tantrum has brought unwelcome attention to both our families during what should have been a private celebration. We expect this matter to be rectified immediately." I read these messages at Megan's kitchen table, hands shaking but resolve strengthening. For 31 years, I had absorbed blame and shame that wasn't mine to carry. Not this time. The following day brought unexpected support. My second cousin Rachel called. "I just want you to know, I saw what happened. The way Aunt Catherine has always treated you isn't right. Our whole side of the family has seen it for years, but nobody knew how to intervene." Mrs. Abernathy, my parents' neighbor for 20 years, sent a kind message. "Dear Sophia, I've watched you grow up alongside your sister, and I've often wondered if you knew how special your artistic spirit is. What happened at the wedding was wrong, and I'm proud of you for valuing yourself enough to leave. Most surprisingly, family friends began taking sides, and many were choosing mine. The Prescotts, who'd been in my parents' social circle since before I was born, sent flowers with a note reading, "We've always adored your creative spirit. Family should build you up, not tear you down." The wedding photographer, Alicia, continued sending evidence. "I've never seen anything like it," she wrote. "They kept positioning you out of frame, and when I tried to center you in some shots, your mother actually told me you weren't photogenic and to focus on Heather." It was uncomfortable for everyone. My high school friend Diane, who'd been close with both Heather and me before college, reached out. "I should have said something years ago. Remember when your art got selected for that traveling exhibition junior year? Heather told everyone you only got picked because your teacher felt sorry for you. She couldn't stand when you got recognition for anything." Former bridesmaids from my past, women I'd stood beside at their weddings, shared stories of how Heather had tried to manipulate them against me even then. "She called me before my wedding and suggested I not put you in any prominent photos because you'd overshadow me with your height," admitted my college friend Taylor. "I ignored her, but now I see the pattern." The most difficult blow came via certified mail 3 days after the wedding. A letter from my parents' attorney. "Dear Miss Mitchell, please be advised that Thomas and Catherine Mitchell have amended their will and trust documents to remove you as a beneficiary, effective immediately. Furthermore, they demand the return of any family heirlooms currently in your possession, including but not limited to your grandmother's pearl earrings." I hadn't expected this level of retaliation, but I also wasn't surprised. The financial disinheritance was just the formal documentation of what had been emotionally true for decades. Yet through all this family chaos, something unexpected was happening with my business. Design clients were increasing, some explicitly mentioning they admired my integrity. A major lifestyle magazine reached out about featuring my work in their next issue. My Instagram following continued to grow, with people specifically seeking out my design portfolio after learning about the wedding hallway sister. A week after the wedding, my phone displayed a number I didn't recognize. Against better judgment, I answered. "Sophia, this is Jackson, Heather's husband." He sounded uncomfortable. I remained silent, waiting. "Look, I didn't know about the table thing. I swear, the seating chart was handled by your mother and Heather, and I was told you had approved everything." His voice lowered. "I would never have allowed that if I'd known. My family doesn't operate that way." "Why are you calling me Jackson?" I asked, emotionally exhausted. "Because I'm seeing a side of Heather I never saw before. She's obsessed with the social media fallout, more concerned about her image than anything else, and your parents." He paused. "Let's just say I'm getting a clearer picture of the family dynamics." After hanging up, I sat wondering if he was being genuine or just doing damage control for the Williams family reputation. That evening, Heather launched her counterattack. A carefully curated Instagram post appeared on her account, childhood photos of us together, captioned with a lengthy explanation about how I had always struggled with emotional regulation and created drama at family events. She referenced a teenage incident where I'd supposedly had a breakdown. In reality, I'd had a panic attack after my father berated me for getting a B in calculus. She painted herself as the long-suffering sister who had always tried to include Sophia despite her difficulties. The post concluded, "Mental health struggles are real, and I only share this to ask for compassion and understanding for my sister during this difficult time for her." It was masterful gaslighting, disguised as concern. The ultimate power play, reframing my act of self-respect as evidence of instability. But this time, her tactics didn't work as intended. The comments filled with skepticism. "Convenient that you're suddenly concerned about her mental health after going viral. If you care so much about your sister, why was she seated in a hallway?" This reads like textbook Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. For the first time in our lives, Heather's version of reality wasn't automatically accepted as truth. And I realized I was finally free of the most painful prison of all: the desperate need for my family's approval. As the dust from the initial viral explosion began to settle, something remarkable happened. My inbox filled with messages from strangers sharing their own stories of family exclusion and mistreatment. "I was the scapegoat in my family for 40 years until I walked away," wrote a woman named Denise. "Your courage to leave that wedding gave me the strength to finally set boundaries with my own toxic relatives." A man named Patrick shared, "My family seated my husband and me at a back table behind a column at my sister's wedding. I wish I'd had your courage to leave instead of sitting there feeling less than all night." These messages came by the hundreds, then thousands. People who saw their own painful family dynamics reflected in my experience. Far from being alone, I discovered I was part of an invisible community of family outsiders who had spent years questioning their own worth. Among the flood of messages came one that stopped me cold, from Claire, a cousin on my father's side who had been mysteriously absent from family gatherings since I was a teenager. "Sophia, you probably don't remember me well. I've been watching your story unfold, and it's like seeing my own history repeat itself. Your father's family has a pattern of selecting a golden child and a scapegoat in each generation. In my generation, your father was the golden one, and I was the family disappointment. I've been estranged for 15 years, and while it's been painful, it's been the healthiest decision of my life." We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in Brookline. Claire was in her 50s now, with the same Mitchell blue eyes but a warmth my father lacked. She brought family photos I'd never seen and stories I'd never heard. "Your grandfather did the same thing to your father's brother, your Uncle James," she explained. "The family wrote James off as unstable when he was simply more sensitive and creative than your father." Sound familiar? "I barely know Uncle James," I admitted. "He only came to family events occasionally, and my parents always acted like he was someone to be tolerated, not enjoyed." "Of course they did," Claire nodded. "He didn't fit the Mitchell success narrative. Neither did I. Neither do you." 2 days later, another unexpected connection. An email from my father's sister, Aunt Rebecca, whom I hadn't seen in over a decade. "Sophia, I've been watching what happened from afar. I recognize the pattern immediately because I lived it too. Your grandfather cut me out of his will when I chose to become a teacher instead of joining the family business. Your father stood by and let it happen, just as he's doing to you now. I should have reached out years ago, but family conditioning runs deep. I'm sorry. If you're open to it, I'd love to reconnect." Suddenly, the family tree I thought I knew revealed hidden branches of exiles and outcasts, creative, compassionate people who had been pruned away for failing to conform to the Mitchell definition of success. Professional support arrived unexpectedly too. Design Magazine, a prestigious industry publication, reached out about featuring my work in their Designers to Watch section. The editor was refreshingly direct. "Your aesthetic caught our attention months ago, but your recent stand against toxic family dynamics sealed the decision. We need more authentic voices in the design community." Former clients became vocal advocates. Janelle Harris, a boutique owner whose branding I'd designed the previous year, posted a glowing testimonial, proud to have worked with Sophia Mitchell, whose integrity matches her creative talent. I've added her hallway table number to my office wall as a reminder that self-respect matters more than keeping the peace. As my professional reputation grew, so did my support network. A group of women who had experienced similar family dynamics reached out to form a virtual support community. We began meeting weekly on video calls, sharing stories and healing strategies. These strangers turned friends understood parts of my experience that even Megan, with all her loyalty and love, couldn't fully grasp. During our third meeting, a woman named Patricia asked a question that shifted my perspective. Have you considered that your ability to see beauty and create art developed precisely because you were the outsider? That your creativity might be directly connected to your position in the family? The thought had never occurred to me. I'd always seen my artistic nature as the cause of my family's disapproval, not as the valuable gift that emerged from it. One evening, my phone displayed a number I hadn't seen in years, the nursing home where my grandmother Elizabeth, my father's mother, resided. Thinking there must be some emergency, I answered immediately. Sophia, it's Grandma Liz. Her voice was weaker than I remembered but still carried that distinctive Mitchell determination. Grandma, is everything okay? No, everything is not okay. I saw you on the television, dear. About the wedding. My heart sank. Another disapproving family member. I want you to know, she continued, that I am prouder of you for walking out of that wedding than I have ever been of anyone in this family. It took me 92 years to recognize the pattern, and you figured it out at 31. Tears streamed down my face as she continued. Your grandfather did the same to your Uncle James, you know. Brilliant man, artistic like you. They broke his spirit. But you, my dear, you're made of stronger stuff. The next unexpected ally appeared in the form of Jessica, Heather's college roommate. She requested to meet somewhere your sister would never go, which turned out to be a dive bar in Somerville with craft beers and live local music. Heather was horrible to live with, Jessica confessed after her second beer. She took credit for group projects, spread rumors about anyone who challenged her, and once accidentally spilled coffee on my thesis notes the day before it was due because she was jealous I got better advisor feedback than she did. Jessica had maintained the friendship out of a combination of social convenience and lingering fear of Heather's retribution. When I saw that post about the hallway table, I wasn't surprised at all. That's pure Heather, maintaining the perfect image while deliberately hurting someone who threatens her narrative. Perhaps most transformative was my connection with Dr. Elaine Marshall, a therapist specializing in family systems and narcissistic family dynamics. After seeing my story featured in a Psychology magazine article about family scapegoating, she reached out offering professional guidance. What you're experiencing has a name, Dr. Marshall explained in our first session. In narcissistic family systems, roles are assigned early. The golden child who can do no wrong, and the scapegoat who can do no right. These aren't based on the children's actual behavior but on the parents' needs. Heather wasn't chosen because she was better. You weren't rejected because you were worse. The system needed these roles, and you were cast accordingly. For the first time, the irrational family dynamics that had shaped my entire life made perfect, terrible sense. I wasn't imagining the uneven treatment, I wasn't overreacting. The problem wasn't my sensitivity or my artistic temperament or my failure to apply myself like Heather. The problem was a family system that required someone to play the role of less than so others could feel greater than. And I was done auditioning for that part. 3 weeks after the wedding, I made 2 significant decisions. I committed to weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Marshall and I moved out of my apartment into a new space across town, one my family had never visited and wouldn't know how to find. The therapy process was both excruciating and liberating. Dr. Marshall helped me understand that my family dynamics weren't just strict parenting or sibling rivalry but a textbook case of family scapegoating. The hardest part of healing, she explained during our second session, is accepting that the family you wished for doesn't exist. The parents capable of truly seeing and valuing you aren't the parents you have. I spent entire sessions raging, grieving, then slowly accepting this truth. I mourned not just recent events but a lifetime of conditional love and impossible expectations. I mourned the little girl who changed her interests, her appearance, even her laugh trying to earn approval that was never going to come. The good news, Dr. Marshall continued, is that once you stop trying to win an unwinnable game, you can redirect that energy toward building the life you actually want. That redirection began with my living space. My previous apartment had been deliberately neutral, beige walls, minimal decor, nothing that might invite criticism during my parents' rare visits. My new place became a canvas for self-expression. I painted one wall a vibrant teal, installed floating shelves for my art books and ceramics collection, and hung my own photographs and paintings, pieces I'd previously kept stored away, fearing family judgment. With Dr. Marshall's guidance, I started a private blog documenting my healing journey. I wrote about recognizing familiar patterns, untangling family mythologies, and rediscovering parts of myself I'd suppressed to minimize family conflict. To my surprise, this personal journal gained thousands of followers through word of mouth, many sharing similar experiences of family scapegoating. Your words gave language to feelings I've carried for decades, wrote one reader. For the first time, I don't feel crazy for experiencing what I experienced. As my understanding deepened, so did my professional opportunities. The Design magazine feature led to speaking invitations at creative conferences. My client base expanded beyond Boston to include national brands. I hired 2 assistants to help manage the workflow, a step I'd hesitated to take before, uncomfortable with my own success in a way I now recognized as family conditioning. The hardest but most necessary aspect of transformation involved establishing clear boundaries. I drafted but never sent dozens of emails to my parents and Heather, trying to find the perfect words to explain my feelings without attacking theirs. Dr. Marshall gently pointed out the futility of this exercise. "They're not interested in understanding your perspective," she said. "They're interested in returning you to your assigned role. The most compassionate thing, for everyone, is to step out of the drama triangle entirely." With her help, I crafted a brief, neutral message to my family, explaining that I needed space to process recent events and would not be in contact for the foreseeable future. I provided my lawyers information for any necessary legal or financial communications. The response was predictable: emotional manipulation, guilt, anger, then threats. I didn't engage with any of it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to convince my family to see me differently. I was simply seeing myself differently, which proved infinitely more valuable. The approach of Thanksgiving, the first major holiday since the wedding, brought fresh anxiety. Traditionally, I'd spent holidays with my family, enduring subtle put-downs and comparisons while maintaining a forced smile. This year, I declined the obligation without offering alternative plans, which unleashed a fresh wave of family outrage. "Your mother is heartbroken," my father's text read. "After everything we've done for you, you can't give us one day?" Instead of responding or justifying my decision, I accepted an invitation from Megan and her partner to join their Friendsgiving celebration. Surrounded by people who wanted me there, who appreciated my contribution of handmade place cards and autumn centerpieces without comparing them to someone else's achievements, I experienced a holiday without knots in my stomach or rehearsed responses to expected criticisms. "You seem different," observed Megan's cousin Ryan as we helped with dishes afterward. "Lighter somehow." He was right. The constant effort of trying to earn acceptance from people committed to withholding it had been exhausting in ways I hadn't fully recognized until I stopped trying. Christmas brought another invitation from my parents, this one accompanied by subtle reminders of family heirlooms I might lose access to and connections that might not be available to me in the future if I continued my childish estrangement. Instead of caving to these familiar pressure tactics, I booked a solo trip to a small coastal town, where I spent Christmas morning walking on a deserted beach and Christmas evening sketching in a cafe, exchanging smiles with other holiday orphans who had chosen peace over obligation. I texted Aunt Rebecca, Uncle James, and Cousin Claire, my newly discovered allies from the exiled branch of the family tree, sending holiday wishes without expectations. Their warm responses felt more like family than any Mitchell gathering I could remember. By February, 6 months after the wedding, I had established a new rhythm to my life. My design business was flourishing. My blog community was growing. And I had begun teaching a weekly art workshop for women recovering from emotional abuse. My apartment had become a true reflection of my aesthetic, colorful, eclectic, filled with books and plants and original art from creator friends. Most importantly, I was developing what Dr. Marshall called internal validation, the ability to recognize my own worth without external confirmation. After decades of seeking approval from people constitutionally incapable of giving it, I was learning to approve of myself. The greatest freedom, she told me during a breakthrough session, comes when you no longer need them to acknowledge what they did. When your healing isn't dependent on their recognition of the harm. I wasn't completely there yet, but I was on the path. The girl who had walked out of a wedding 7 months earlier, terrified but determined, would hardly recognize the woman I was becoming. Not because I had changed fundamentally, but because I had finally allowed myself to be who I already was. The hallway table had been meant as an insult. Instead, it had become the doorway to my liberation. On a rainy Tuesday in March, 7 months after the wedding, I was working on designs at my favorite cafe when a familiar voice cut through the ambient chatter. Sophia. I looked up to find Heather standing beside my table, designer handbag dripping rainwater onto the floor. Gone was the perfectly coiffed wedding princess. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her makeup minimal, her expression uncertain. "What are you doing here?" I asked, instinctively gathering my belongings as if to leave. "I saw your location tag on Instagram," she admitted. "Can we talk, please?" My first instinct was to refuse, to protect the peace I'd worked so hard to establish. But something in her demeanor, a vulnerability I'd rarely seen, made me gesture to the empty chair across from me. 10 minutes, I said. Heather sat down, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "You're everywhere, you know. Your design work is on billboards. People ask me about my sister the artist at fundraisers. That article about you in Boston Magazine is framed in the lobby of Morrison & Klein." She named a prestigious advertising agency I'd recently completed a project for. "Is that why you're here? Because I'm successful enough to acknowledge now?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "I deserve that," she said quietly. "I deserve worse, actually." She looked around to ensure no one was listening, then leaned forward. "My marriage is falling apart. Jackson and I are in counseling, but it's not good. He says I'm not the person he thought he married." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely meaning it despite everything. "But I don't see what that has to do with me." The counselor asked us to identify patterns in our families of origin that might be affecting our relationship, Heather continued, her voice dropping further. Jackson talked about his parents' perfectionism. Then he looked at me and said, "And you treat me exactly how your family treated Sophia." She wiped away a tear. He was right. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. What followed was something I'd never expected. A raw, unfiltered confession from my seemingly perfect sister. "I've been jealous of you my entire life," she admitted. "Your creativity, your independence, how you see beauty in everything. Mom and Dad had me so programmed to achieve that I never developed any sense of who I actually am outside of accomplishments." I sat in stunned silence as Heather continued. "They pitted us against each other from the beginning. Remember when you won that art award in elementary school, and suddenly Dad signed me up for private art lessons? It wasn't because I was interested in art. It was because they couldn't stand that you had something special they couldn't take credit for. But they always favored you, I argued. The attention, the gifts, the praise. The control, Heather countered. The expectations, the constant threat of disapproval. Do you know what Dad said when I got my first A in college? Mitchells don't get A minuses. Not congratulations on 7 other A's, just disappointment. As we talked, layers of family mythology began to unravel. Heather revealed that our parents' picture-perfect marriage had been essentially a business arrangement for years. Mother stayed for social status, father stayed for family image. Their shared project had been manufacturing the appearance of perfection, with Heather as their showcase and me as the designated failure necessary for contrast. The wedding seating wasn't my idea, Heather admitted. I had you at the head table in the original plan. Mom changed it the week before. When I questioned it, she said you'd be more comfortable away from the spotlight. And you believed that? I asked incredulously. I wanted to, she acknowledged. It was easier than standing up to her. I've never stood up to either of them. Not once in 30 years. The most stunning revelation came when Heather described the family's reaction after I left the wedding. Dad actually defended you at first, she said. He told Mom the hallway seating was a bridge too far and that she should have consulted him. They had a huge fight about it in the hotel suite afterward. I've never seen him challenge her like that. Dad defended me? I couldn't reconcile this with the man who had threatened to disinherit me. For about 5 minutes, until Mom reminded him how many Williams banking executives were at the reception and what they might think. Then he fell in line, like always. Heather twisted her wedding ring again. That's when I realized I'd married someone exactly like him. Someone who cares more about appearances than actual human connections. Our 10 minutes stretched to 2 hours as we excavated decades of misunderstandings and manipulations. Not all wounds were healed, some were too deep, the betrayals too significant for instant reconciliation. But for the first time, we saw each other not as rivals in some cosmic competition, but as casualties of the same toxic system. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Heather said as we finally prepared to leave. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. And I'm trying to be better. As we stood to part ways, she added, the family narrative was always that I was the successful one and you were the failure. But you're the only one of us brave enough to live an authentic life. That makes you the strongest Mitchell by far. I watched her walk away in the rain, shoulders squared in that familiar Mitchell posture but something softer in her gait. I felt neither triumph nor vindication, just a quiet sadness for 2 little girls who had been positioned as opponents when we should have been allies. The truth, I was learning, rarely fit into the neat categories of villains and victims that make for satisfying narratives. Even the worst behavior usually came from wounds, and even the most difficult people contained multitudes. This didn't excuse the harm done, but it helped me contextualize it in a way that lessened its power over me. That unexpected cafe confrontation marked the beginning of a careful, tentative reconstruction, not of the relationship we'd pretended to have for social media and family gatherings, but of something new, built on difficult truths rather than comfortable fictions. It wasn't the happy ending of childhood fairy tales. It was something more valuable, an honest beginning. 1 year after the wedding that changed everything, I stood in the center of my new design studio in a converted warehouse space in Cambridge, surrounded by friends, clients, and supporters celebrating the official opening of Mitchell Design Collective. The industrial space with exposed brick and massive windows had been transformed with my signature aesthetic, bold colors, vintage furniture, and walls showcasing work from local artists I admired. To new beginnings, Megan toasted, raising her champagne glass. The crowd echoed the sentiment, and as I looked around at the faces of my chosen family, I felt a sense of wholeness that had eluded me for most of my life. The year had brought both challenge and clarity. Through continued therapy with Dr. Marshall, I'd developed a balanced perspective on family dynamics that neither absolved harmful behavior nor kept me trapped in resentment. I understood now that my parents and Heather weren't monsters. They were people caught in generational patterns. They lacked the tools or awareness to break. This understanding allowed me to establish limited contact on my own terms. Monthly lunches with my father in neutral locations, where conversation stayed in safe territory, current events, his golf game, my recent projects. He never apologized directly for his role in the wedding debacle or the decades of favoritism, but in his own way, he was trying. He'd taken to sending articles about artists and designers with brief notes. Reminded me of your work. Small acknowledgments, but meaningful from a man who had spent most of my life looking past me. My mother remained largely unchanged, still referencing Heather's accomplishments during our rare interactions, still flinching at my creative lifestyle choices, which now included a sleeve of botanical tattoos and occasionally purple hair. I accepted that Catherine Mitchell would never be the mother I'd longed for as a child. I could love her from a distance without expecting validation I knew she couldn't provide. Heather and I were writing a different story. Following our cafe confrontation, she had made significant life changes. She separated from Jackson 6 months after the wedding, moved out of the luxury condo into a modest apartment, and started therapy to address her own family of origin issues. We now met twice monthly for coffee, carefully rebuilding a relationship based on authenticity rather than competition. I filed for divorce yesterday, she told me during our most recent meeting. Jackson's actually being decent about it. I think he's relieved too. How are Mom and Dad taking it? I asked. About how you'd expect. Dad's concerned about the Williams connection being severed. Mom's worried what the country club will think. Heather rolled her eyes, a gesture that would have been unthinkable from the perfect daughter a year ago. I told them I'd rather be happy than impressive. I think I got that from you. The blog I'd started as personal therapy had evolved into a supportive community for people healing from family scapegoating. I declined multiple reality TV offers and book deals that would have sensationalized the wedding story, choosing instead to focus on the universal aspects of family healing. The hallway table had become a metaphor in our community. Don't accept a hallway table when you deserve a seat at the main table was our unofficial motto. The most unexpected reconciliation came with my father. 4 months after the wedding, he had asked to meet alone. No mother, no Heather, no lawyers. We sat at a waterfront restaurant as he awkwardly worked his way around an apology without quite managing to deliver one. I've been thinking about your Uncle James, he finally said. My brother. We were close as children, you know. Before Grandpa decided he was the family disappointment, I finished. My father looked startled. Who told you about that? Aunt Rebecca, Uncle James, Cousin Claire. Turns out, the family outcasts keep in touch. He was quiet for a long time. I haven't spoken to James in 7 years, he admitted. After Dad died, there seemed no reason to maintain the fiction of family harmony anymore. That's a shame, I said. He's a remarkable person, creative, thoughtful, kind. All the qualities that apparently disqualify someone from being a real Mitchell. My father flinched, then nodded slowly. Your grandfather was a difficult man, demanding, unyielding. I learned early that the path of least resistance was to become what he wanted. And you wanted me to do the same, I observed without accusation. I wanted life to be easier for you than it was for James, he corrected. I thought conformity was the kindest gift I could offer. I see now that was misguided. It wasn't the sweeping apology I might have scripted, but it was perhaps the most honest conversation we'd ever had. 2 months later, he attended the soft opening of my studio without my mother, bringing a vintage drafting table that had belonged to his uncle, another creative Mitchell who had lived on the family margins. My romantic life had taken a positive turn as well. I'd met Ryan, a landscape architect, at a creative professionals mixer. He valued my artistic perspective, supported my boundaries with my family, and most importantly, loved me for exactly who I was, rather than who he wished I might become. It was too soon for grand declarations, but for the first time, I was in a relationship that added to my sense of self rather than diminishing it. As the studio opening celebration wound down, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The spring evening was cool but pleasant, with stars emerging in the darkening sky. From inside came laughter and conversation, the sound of people who chose to be in each other's lives rather than remaining together out of obligation or appearance. The journey from that hallway table to this moment had been neither straight nor simple. There had been setbacks, moments of doubt, old patterns reasserting themselves when I least expected. The Mitchell family legacy wouldn't be undone in a single year or even a decade. But with each conscious choice, each boundary maintained, each authentic expression, I was writing a new story, not just for myself, but potentially for generations to come. The wedding day that was meant to be a pinnacle of my exclusion had instead become the catalyst for my liberation. By walking away from a hallway table, I had claimed my place at a different kind of gathering altogether, one where everyone belonged, not by accident of birth or adherence to arbitrary standards, but by mutual respect and genuine care. Sometimes the most shocking thing you can do is simply value yourself enough to leave situations that diminish you. And sometimes, that one act of self-respect creates ripples that change not just your life, but the lives of others you may never even meet. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from a situation to preserve your self-respect? Or stayed and later wished you'd left? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own courage. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Together we're building a community of people choosing authenticity over appearance, truth over comfort, and self-respect over approval seeking. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you always deserve a seat at the table.